Everybody, this is Izzy here coming to you with another special review. Today's share is about one of the most anticipated films of 2008 that broke all kinds of records and generally, in retrospect, brought Batman back to prominence. Because before, you have to remember, after the debacle of Batman and Robin, Batman was essentially in developmental limbo for years upon years upon years, and then for a while there was a lot of fans and even critics who didn't necessarily want to see another Batman adaptation just because the stigma of Batman and Robin left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. Was it until Batman Begins slowly brought him back into prominence? Then The Dark Knight is what really brought about Batman being essentially popular again. And not saying he wasn't popular before, but it's just having him brought back in such a gritty, darker take of the character. It really brought him back into the forefront to where he was taken seriously again. The Share is based off the director Christopher Nolan directed sequel of The Dark Knight, starring Christian Bale returning in his role as Bruce Wayne Batman, Michael Caine as Alfred. Then you have the introduction of the Joker. Well, I don't want to say introduction, but I guess you can say introduction. You have Heath Ledger playing the Joker. You have Aaron Eckhart playing Harvey Dent / Two-Face. And you have Maggie Gyllenhaal, who is replacing Katie Holmes as Rachel Dawes. And then you have Gary Oldman, who is playing Lieutenant / Commissioner Gordon. The Dark Knight was literally one of the most anticipated films of 2008. Not necessarily because it was a sequel to Batman Begins, but it was also anticipated due to the performance of Heath Ledger. People were at first, when he was announced that he was casted to play the Joker, there was initial reservation as people weren't necessarily familiar with his work, and those that were, they've only seen him in the Australian low-budget TV series known as Roar. You had him in 10 Things I Hate About You. You had him in Brokeback Mountain, The Order, and The First Night. So it was just one of those A Knight's Tale. Not The First Night, but A Knight's Tale. So Heath Ledger, based off his resume, their filmography, there wasn't anything that made people go, wow, I could see him as a Joker. And given that we hadn't necessarily seen any footage of him in that particular role, there was a lot of anticipation and reservation at the same time. The sequel of The Dark Knight is basically Batman continuing his battle against the mob, and that's when the Joker comes in and is causing all kinds of anarchy and chaos within the Gotham City spectrum. And given that he has never faced a foe of this magnitude, Batman, to a certain degree, is completely out of his element because the Joker is attempting to get him to break his one rule and to more or less have this win over Batman. And that is, if Batman can kill the Joker, then the Joker has essentially turned Batman into something that he was avoided to become, and that is the monster that villains like the Joker is, for example. Christopher Nolan did such an amazing job, especially with filming certain sequences in the IMAX and with IMAX technology, and along the fact that what made Batman Begins so interesting and unique, what he did was he took those specific elements and he improved upon it with The Dark Knight. And The Dark Knight just made everything that much more better. And given that it's much more gritty, it's darker, it's more action-packed, and the character interactions, the acting is just, everything was hitting on all cylinders with this particular film. And I can honestly say, without a shadow of a doubt, Heath Ledger is next to Joaquin Phoenix, because I have to say Joaquin Phoenix, for me personally, is still the best Joker representation. Even though the Joker is considered to be one of those type of characters that doesn't have a set origin, his past is multiple choice, as he said in The Killing Joke. For me, it's Joaquin Phoenix tied with Heath Ledger and Jack Nicholson. But this particular incantation of the Joker is just one of those type of performances that Heath Ledger. Whenever I read the Joker dialogue in comic books, I always pictured and heard Heath Ledger's voice in my head whenever I read the comic books. And to me, there's no wrong depiction of this character. And the Joker, Heath Ledger's performance is just absolutely phenomenal. He does an amazing job. And the fact that it was his last role before he tragically passed away, he left a wonderful legacy with just putting everything that he had in this role, and it's just phenomenal. Just completely beautiful, tragic, and haunting at the same time. He just commands the screen. And I had an interesting debate with a friend of mine who we were discussing the quality of The Dark Knight. If you take Heath Ledger out this film, there is no way it's as good as great as it is. It would simply be, in my opinion, mediocre and decent at best. We actually kind of saw that with The Dark Knight Rises, because I truly believe, and many other critics have made this statement as well. The Dark Knight trilogy, in my opinion, as well, peaked with this. I mean, you could have actually had The Dark Knight Rises as a second film, and you could have had this as a third film, and it would have just been just as monumental and important as well. Where not only just Heath Ledger that does an amazing job, you have Christian Bale, who is playing this Batman who was attempted to get out of the vigilante lifestyle, but he can't, and he's hoping that Harvey Dent, the new district attorney, that is going to be the White Knight of Gotham, and he's also going to bring about the hope and the peace that the Gotham needs in order to combat villains like the Joker. Slowly but surely, we just see the anarchy just become that much more corrupted. We see Joker's influence within the law enforcement division. It is, when you look at this film, it's very interesting how there's a lot of themes in it that are very prevalent to what's going on in society today. You could take Batman films like The Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises, or even Joker. You could take all those films and have it to where it mirrors the myriad of controversy and the corruption that we have been experiencing, whether it's in the media, whether it's in just real life scenarios, where it's kind of frightening when you see how a lot of themes here are just mirroring exactly what we're experiencing in these modern times. And The Dark Knight, you have Christian Bale just completely feeding off the energy that Heath Ledger's bringing. Then you have Aaron Eckhart, who does an amazing job as Harvey Dent before he becomes Two-Face. And that one of my biggest disappointments within this film, and it's a small disappointment, is that I truly wish that we had more Two-Face. Because when Aaron Eckhart is portraying the role of Two-Face, I mean, he just does, much like Heath Ledger, he commands the screen, and it's just so haunting and beautiful, and you just can't take your eyes off him. And Gary Oldman does an amazing job as Lieutenant / Commissioner Gordon. Just everyone is on their A game within this film, and it's the perfect superhero film, if you will. And you don't necessarily have that. I think that's what's missing with a lot of superhero films these days, is that there's too much CGI, there's too much action. I mean, I don't want to say too much action. There's too much CGI, there's too many quippy one-liners, there's too many comedic moments, and a lot of the intensity that we're supposed to experience, for example, that this film contains, a lot of the comedic moments that happen in a lot of your other later superhero films, it takes away the epic monumental moments that is supposed to instill that sense of seriousness. The Dark Knight just takes it to a whole new level. And I still believe, without a shadow of a doubt, this is probably, and this is going to be a bold statement to make, I still believe this is possibly the greatest Batman film that's ever been made. Even though you could look at it and say what Christopher Nolan did with the Batman trilogy, with his Batman trilogy, it's all essentially a cop thriller drama that just happens to have Batman in it. But he made it to where he created a Batman film that he wanted to see, and at the same time the audience wanted to see, and the audience responded. It's really interesting how you find yourself looking back on this film, and no matter how many times you find yourself trying to think about another film that could essentially replace it as one of the greatest superhero films, you can't really find that specific film. And what makes it even better, this came out in a time period where those films, you just had a lot of great films that was just coming back to back to back to back to back. This was the same year that the first Iron Man came out. You had the Incredible Hulk, and I know a lot of people didn't care for Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but I did enjoy that. You just had those three blockbuster films. No, excuse me, 4 blockbuster films that just changed the name of the game as far as cinema is concerned. But The Dark Knight just is on a whole new level, and I still love it to this very day. I can remember certain quotes. I can remember various scenes. It's just, and the scene where this shows you how much of a brilliant action director that Christopher Nolan can be when he actually has the proper editing techniques. When you think about how a lot of superhero films these days that have a lot of action, they rely on a lot of green screens and CGI to capture a specific moment. The fact that they literally flipped an 18-wheeler within the streets of Chicago without CGI, just strings and a little 18-wheeler just being flipped over, that moment in the film, I can just remember a lot the audience gasping. And The Dark Knight just has so many memorable moments. It has obviously there's action, there's suspense, there's a little bit of horror in there as well. I mean, Heath Ledger with the scene where he's holding a handheld camera and he's tormenting this fake Batman, and his voice, when you hear his voice, but how his voice changes into something very comedic, but at the same time it transforms into a full-on demonic rage. The theater just went completely silent. It's just a perfect film that was perfect for its time, and it's still, for me personally, I don't believe it'll ever age, and it'll never be dated. That's how brilliant the director Christopher Nolan is. But overall, The Dark Knight, 2008, one of the greatest superhero films ever made, bar none. I don't think there's anything that's going to come close for quite some time. And I give it a 5 out of 5, 2 thumbs up. Highly recommend it. I'm sure pretty much everybody has watched this film. If you haven't, please do so. Let me know in the comment section what you thought about it. Let me know on my Facebook what you thought about it. Provide a like, provide a heart, and you will be hearing from me again, my friends. Take care, be safe, and adios.